And now from teenagers doing incredible things in the world of motorsports over to our parenting expert right here on your Feel Good Breakfast Show. Nikki joins us, and we are talking about the toxic effects that tech could have on your children if you don't manage it properly.
In an increasingly digital world, screens are finding their way into ever younger hands, with babies of just a few months old being handed smartphones to play with by their parents, or even just to pacify them. And toddlers can often be found glued to a screen. Well, this morning we chat to the creative parenting expert, Nikki, who is also the co-author of the best-selling book, Tech Savvy Parenting, about the traps parents of little ones need to avoid. And I think we have all fallen into at some time in our lives. I have to ask a very broad question. Next, welcome back.
Thank you.
Is technology the problem?
You know, technology in essence is neutral. It's what we do with it and what we allow our children to do with it and how much we allow our children to do with it, then that can lead to issues emotionally, developmentally. And the problem is that it's just so darned easy, you know. You're in the car with your kids and they're frustrated and they want to get out of their car seats, and what do? You pass your cell phone back and immediately they shut up and they just get going with something and they stop whinging. So it's easy to then fall into that trap of every time they go, to pass them a screen or a device, or plonk them in front of television, of course. And so it's almost become a bit of a default setting for parents to just hand over a screen.
I suppose we don't want to be too broad here, because there are applications, there are ways that it can be used. It is a pacifier, as you've identified, but I think what interests me most, looking at my own kind of narrative at the moment, is why babies, why toddlers, why children of that age specifically?
Well, because in that sort of foundational phase age, that sort of 0 to 5 years of age, the body is the architect of the brain. Now, when we talk about handing over a screen to a child, what did I say? They sit still. So they're at risk of developing what I call triple S syndrome: sedentary, screen-based, solitary existence. And it's very, very easy for that to happen, because in front of a screen, they sit still. They sit. They're not moving. Now, for that cerebellum and for the brain to grow and for all the neurological pathways to be connecting
for those
synapses to fire, for all that myelin to be laid down, you've got to be using a neurological pathway over and over again. Now, if they're only using the neurological pathways for working on a screen, they're missing out on a whole host of other connections in the brain. And those connections need to be very strong. Otherwise, what happens is teachers are finding children can't hold themselves up in a chair for more than 5 minutes at a time without collapsing. So the muscle tone, the posture is a problem. Children are suffering from myopia, short-sightedness, from a very early age, and opticians are saying that they are seeing an absolute epidemic of short-sightedness, because you always hold a tablet this far from you, or a phone.
Distance, yeah.
And the TV is always a certain distance from the couch. You don't move the couch all the time. Now, the opposite of that is having a child running outside, up and down a slide, a jungle gym, playing catches, kicking or hitting a ball, where they're having to exercise a different focal depth all the time. That develops a very strong visual system. And when you are teaching a child to read, reading's tiring. You've got to have a strong, fit visual system to learn how to read. And so they're getting a weaker system from working at the same focal depth. When we talk about working on a piece of paper like art in preschool, we should be giving children paper that is wider than their body, so that when they paint, they cross their midline of their body from left to right, which is integrating both left and right sides of the brain. So what you're finding a lot with kids who spend much time on a tablet is that they're very good at dragging and dropping, and they do this both-sidedness, but they don't ever cross over.
Wow.
And that is translating into problems with writing and reading later on.
We're going to delve a little deeper into the exploration of that learning in the real world, as opposed to on a screen, because there are things that can be learnt via the visual medium, but you know, it's a big wide world out there, and I want to really delve into the difference between those two. But you can stay tuned. We're going to continue talking about exactly how technology can be impacting the lives of especially our young ones, our babies and our toddlers, and what we need to be aware of as parents.
It's my Feel Good Breakfast Show.
Earlier this morning, we started our chat about technology and how it's impacting on our young children, our toddlers, our babies' lives, and what we need to be aware of as parents. And we continue that discussion now with our creative parenting expert, Nikki Bush. Just to do a bit of a recap, we understand the need to pacify our children, and often life needs a quick fix every now and then, but far too often we just jump to that too easily. And we've spoken about the dangers of a child learning just through that one medium. Let's delve a bit deeper into the impacts of a child kind of learning and exploring the world and life purely through a screen, as opposed to in the actual real world experience, the tactile experience of life.
So you're sitting there with a tablet, and if you just push your hand along the screen, it's very smooth, it's very flat, it's giving you very little input, sensory input. Children are first and foremost multi-sensory beings. They have 5 senses, and they also have a host of hidden senses. And all of those senses need to be stimulated in order for a child to make meaning of their world. So, for example, let's just have a look here. We've got these beautiful squigs. This is a suction construction set. Now feel how much force you're experiencing. You can't experience this kind of sensation in your muscles and joints using a tablet.
Yeah.
Okay, this is real. And look at how we are mapping the world. Things are round, they are gooey, they are soft, they are rubbery. Okay, now this is giving me information about texture, about temperature, about size, shape, weight. You don't get that input off a screen. So we have to give children real experiences in a real world. Take that Play-Doh over there and squish it in your hands. Look, feel the input that's going into your body through the skin.
Even temperature, it's cold, it warms up.
Through the skin, through the
friction,
muscles, through the joints. Children need this because otherwise it's just information. What's on a screen is just information. And one of the big problems we have is children going into grade 1 and the mother saying, my child can do a 100-piece puzzle on a screen. Then you give them real puzzles, a 24-piece puzzle, and the teachers say the kids cannot do it because they don't know how to manipulate something in the real world to fit into that hole, because they haven't mapped the world through their own body. Very important that we don't allow technology to be an experience thief.
Because it's there, I suppose, later on in life, it can be a wonderful source of information, but you need the groundwork to have been laid down before that.
Exactly, that's exactly right. Lay the right foundations, which are very much movement and sensory based, before you allow technology to take over.
So at what age do we start introducing, or when do we know that our child is ready to start broaching that kind of balance?
You know what? You're always going to have technology. This is not an either-or situation. This is an and. And I just have one piece of advice here. What is your child's time on a device displacing in the real world? That's really the question you need to ask. Is my child running and jumping and kicking balls and climbing trees? And are we having physical tussles on the floor with our children? Are they playing shape-matching games? Are they experiencing all their emotions? Or are we shutting them down by handing over a device every time they go, and then they don't experience all the emotions that life comes with? So they're losing their EQ. And they don't learn to be resourceful and resilient on an emotional basis. They don't learn to handle their emotions. And we really need children to be their own best boredom busters. A screen will always prompt a child.
Diffuses that.
Distract a child and keep a child going because it changes all the time. Whereas give a child something real, they've actually got to put in effort and energy. And you see, children are taking the path of least resistance.
Like all of us would.
Like all of us would, if we allow them. So just remember that we need to dig deep in those early years. Dig deep. They should be doing more physical stuff than they should be on a screen.
Just very quickly, I know you've been doing an awesome run of talks on the subject matter. Just one more that people can get in on. How do we do that?
Yes. So I have a new talk called Toxic, Tech and Tot. There's one last one on the 23rd of September at the Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban. So if everybody hops onto my website, nikkibush.com, they can pick up a blog with all the booking details.
Oh, wonderful stuff. Thank you so much. There's also a wealth of other really interesting information there on that website as well. We'd love to hear from you. How do you feel about technology in the life of your little one? In fact, how does it impact your life as well? You can hit us up on our social media platforms.